You're listening to Behind the Flame. Here's your host, John Bartolo.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. I am going to go over a couple things before we get to our guest. So I want to take a minute to thank Kenzie's Optics for sponsoring the show. I want to take a minute to thank 221B Tactical, who came on the pre-show on my IG to talk a little bit about the training he just went through. I want to thank him. We are doing a contest on my IG Live and on our YouTube. All you have to do is head over and leave a review on the iTunes podcast, Behind the Flame. We appreciate 5 stars, but an honest review will do. And we'll pick a winner for some prizes that we have and some stuff that we're going to give away. And we'll even probably have a couple of tactical Tailor prizes, considering we have them on the show. I want to also take a moment to thank everybody in studio, as well as Jason and Melinda Sanju, for giving us the mics and giving us the venue. We're coming to you live from the Dragon's Lair right here in the shop in Kalispell, Montana.
Oh, yeah.
I want to thank D. Mitchell Designs, who's back there working frantically to put this together always, but he deserves that plug. He's always running around like a lunatic. Thank you, Derek. And I also want to thank Austin Web Designs, the intern. Okay. All right. We're gonna graduate him to the full-time employee.
I have a camera now.
He has a camera now.
Oh, wow.
But Austin's invaluable. He's always sprinting around and making sure everything's checked out. And of course, Scummins next to me.
What's up?
And we appreciate everything. I'm really. This is an interesting one. This is an interesting guest, and it's an interesting podcast today because we did this a little in reverse. I had the opportunity to head out to Washington, and as many of you that follow me, we did this in reverse. So this is what makes this a cool one that we threw together here. I had the opportunity to head out to Washington and have my truck vaults installed, as many of you've probably seen on my IG. I know, we'll see them. We'll get to them. So I had the opportunity to do that, and I reached out to my good friend, and I'll announce him properly in a second, and the boys over at Grey Ghost and Tailor, and I said, hey, I'm going to be in the area, and they, this one individual dropped everything, and he said, bro, you're coming by. We're hanging out. So we managed to hang out, spend some time. I toured the shop. I tasted the batter a little bit. I felt the fabrics. I saw the lay of the land. I got to learn a little bit how they tick. And he's been a friend of mine for a couple years now. We were talking about that, and he's a badass motherfucker. He definitely raises our tactical street cred a little bit over here for sure. And I'm jacked up to have him on. He goes by BB. His name's Brent. And he is not only the design guy-ish, tester / cure-all / face / everything of Tailor now, but he's got his hand in a lot of stuff over there, and he's been around the industry for a bit. He's not just another pretty face. He is
Although he is a pretty face.
Although he is a pretty face. And I'm super excited to have him on. What's going on, BB?
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Hopefully that you can live up to that hype. But,
yeah, that's a lot.
That was quite the intro.
I try to build you guys up, even though you don't need it. So we got to spend some time together, and we go, I like to do the intro where I like to talk about a little bit how we met. We met a few years back at a show. We were talking about this. We kind of crossed paths, and you were still in service, right?
Yeah, I was still currently in the service, and I'd take leave every time to go help Tailor, Grey Ghost Precision out at booths like SHOT Show, NRA Show, any of those shows where they have to travel.
And you don't get more real than that. I mean, you're a guy who's actually out there doing it, and you're taking leave to come work the booth. So you're giving straight from the field knowledge to everybody that comes up to the booth, everybody who participated. And we met at a show, and we kind of crossed paths. I'll let you tell it. Kind of tell us a little bit how we met, and tell us how you got from being in service to now you're retired, and how you ended up in that seat.
So first time I met you, I believe, was one of the NRA shows, Kentucky, Louisville, I believe. I went by and I was just like, oh man, I really like your Glock extensions. I've bought a couple of them before. Are you selling them? And you're like, no man, I'm not gonna sell them to you. Just come back and I'll hook you up with some. And literally that's how it started. And every time I saw you, you're like, hey man, what's up? How you doing? Just asking the normal questions, not really industry, nothing, just being a personable individual. And
Being a
that's
decent
stuck
human
with
being.
me.
Being a dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being a normal guy. And then, fast forward like 4 years now, we're, working out on a Saturday together. Like,
It's amazing. You never know where people will end up, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy. But so you were in the military, and now talk to me about how you even got to Tailor and the transition from the military to being there full time. I mean, it's wild because I get the text by text updates, but tell everybody kind of how you went from being overseas, being involved, being in service to now you're this guy.
You're probably gonna have a ton of veterans coming back to this episode and wondering what your secret
Yeah,
sauce
what?
is.
Yeah,
So
walk me
put it
through.
out
Yeah,
there, man.
so put it out there.
the
Like, tell me
sauce?
how
What's the
what was
sauce?
going through your brain. Like, you're just like, hey, it's just a job, or I love gear, or I'm a gear weirdo. What?
So yeah, no, I'm definitely a gear weirdo. I was always that private that would spend all his money on gear and stuff, and we got I started off with an M24 sniper rifle when I was a private, and we had these magazine inserts that were with it. It wasn't the standard 5-round internal magazine, so we needed some magazine pouches. And my sniper team leader was like, "Hey, go on down to Tailor and talk to the owner. He used to be a sniper. He'll make some pouches for you, and he won't charge you that much." I went down. The owner, he had already passed, Logan Coffee, in 2008, so I missed him by a little bit. But the business was like, yeah, we'll take care of you. The current CEO, Casey Ingalls, he was like, yeah, we'll bang that out. And when I went to go pay for him, he didn't let me pay for him. He was like, no, I know you're taking these are overseas and stuff. And they just posted a little bit ago a picture of me in Iraq, and all my pouches were Tailor stuff from 10 years ago.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
So I knew I wanted to work with businesses like that were constantly taking care of dudes. And fast forward a couple more years, I'm still buying Tailor stuff. I'm on the base that's right down the street, JBLM, and I met a guy at the front desk, and he was, we were just talking, and he was like, "Oh, you carried a sniper rifle overseas?" I was like, "Yeah, I just got back from Afghanistan. I carried a SAS." Knight's gun, and he was like, "Well, we're developing some guns. Would you mind doing some standard tests? Just shoot some MOA drills, see what you can do with it." And at the time, I didn't know what it was. I got handed the prototype of what became our 7.62 rifle, and I just did some tests and everything, and then turned in all the paperwork and the gun. And they're like, "Hey, the CEO wants to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh fuck! Like, did I fuck something up? Did I destroy something?" And when I walked into his office, the rifle. Yeah, you're fine. The rifle I had tested was there, and he was like, "Hey, get with my guy. He's going to do some paperwork. This gun's yours now." And he gave me that gun right on the spot after testing, and then
Nice.
literally from there, on my days off, 3 days, 4 days, I would show up at this shop and help out anything I could do. I mean, I'd take out people's trash. I didn't give a fuck. And then from there, I learned how to sew. I took John back there, showed him all the sewing machines. They taught me how to sew. They taught me how to use the CNC machines to bang out products. And like throughout the next 4 years of being in the military, all my days off, I would come to the shop and volunteer and just learn as much as I possibly could.
And I want to stop you there for a second, B, because it's a common theme. Like, we had Bruce from Quest Bar on, and we had some other folks on that have kind of brought this same theme up. You touched on something. I mean, you started flinging trash. There was no ego there. There was, hey, I know I was king shit overseas or whatever, but now I'm willing to just throw trash. Mm-hmm. I mean, at this point, just to kind of work with a good company and be around good folks. I mean, this is really important for the mindset as we stem into other things, and we got plenty of time to get to them. But tell me about that thought process. I mean, because that's very hard for some guys to do, very humbling. But Bruce had said it. He goes, "You want to come work for me? Just show up with a bag." How do you get that mindset after being? I know you were a sergeant, right? And how do you get that mindset?
Well, I mean, everyone starts somewhere, and like the biggest thing is like eventually you're going to get out of the service. The service has 100% turnaround rate, whether you stay in for 20, 30 years, become a command sergeant major, you're going to get out eventually and you're going to need a job. And when I decided that, I no longer wanted to be in the service, I made that commitment about 4 years out that I was going to transition. And I started looking at my options. And, most people are like, law enforcement or, the catch-all is like, I'm just going to go to college.
Dude, you made that decision way before most dudes. Dude,
Yeah.
for sure.
You flipped the switch a lot quicker. A lot quicker.
I had just recently started being an instructor for combatives and shooting. And I was like, man, I really like this. And I really like gear, so I wanted to pursue that, but I knew I wouldn't be able to do that while I was still in the service. So I had to make that commitment a little early out to get out.
And what's really funny is a mutual friend of BB and I's, Brent Warren, he had a similar plan. His last couple of years of competing, all he talked about was life after competing. And this was a guy who, when he stepped on stage or stepped in the gym, was a legend. You know what I mean? He could have sat on his ass for a couple of years and capitalized on that status, but he was already sowing the seeds for the transition that was going to be him running shows, him doing other things, and having his hand in a lot of companies now. That's really a mindset. I mean, that's like a reset that your mind goes through. That's very humbling, because a lot of guys talk about, well, for a year or two I was, kind of living in my car, or I was doing X, Y, and Z. They don't have the ability to flip the switch that way. I mean, that's amazing. Is it something that you learned early on in childhood, just always look for work, or is it just something more that you just knew you had to do, or family come into play, like I got to provide? What?
So yeah, a little bit of family, and then a little bit of constantly watching people get out and just do horrible with their life. Like anyone who's ever been in the service and has gotten out knows, tons of people that, quote unquote, haven't been successful. They're still trying to, figure out what to do. And I constantly watch that. 10 years of being in the service, you watch tons of people get out and just, their life is a train wreck. And you're like, wow, dude, I don't want to be that guy.
Well, I think that's partially because of the fact that these guys don't make that commitment as far out as you did, even 4 years. That, yep, I'm going to get out. I got to figure out what I want to do, what path it's going to take to get me there. And they just expect, they get out of the military. Well, I'm out now, so where's my job that pays me $200,000 a year? Where is it?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, it's nowhere. You didn't create that opportunity beforehand, so it's nowhere.
And before we get deep into TAC Tailor and in the veteran community and all the thoughts that you have, how many years were you in?
I served 10 years.
And
a decade.
How many deployments?
2. One 12-month to Iraq in 2009, and then a 9-month to Afghanistan in 2012.
Any stories you want to share? Anything?
Mine are all funny, man. I think being in the infantry is it's one of the best jobs in the world, because you get to see the funnier side of life. I think, dealing with dumb shit constantly.
Sure.
Tell you about what I learned, what dysentery really meant. We were driving through Baghdad, down to Zaydan, which was our operating area, and here I am, 19-year-old, guy just in the back of a Stryker, staring at stuff, still junior to the world, and all of a sudden I was like, oh no, I got to go to the bathroom. And let's just say I didn't get there fast enough. So I ended up cutting off my pants and cleaning myself up, and just finished the rest of the patrol in the back of the Stryker with no pants on. I had cut them all completely off. And
oh, but that smelled amazing.
That's a shitty situation.
Yeah, everyone likes to tell stories about I was doing this, I was clearing rooms, I was doing all this. I will tell you about how many times I've crapped myself in different countries just because of either food or
how many different countries have you shit your pants in?
So probably England, Ireland, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan. So 7.
Yeah,
7?
Solid handful plus of countries.
Yeah, and it's just I'm the guy that waits to the last second, and then we're doing something. I'm like, oh man, I gotta go. Just trying to run to the bathroom.
7 poop-tastic experiences. There should be a medal for that.
Yeah. I think funny things like that, because everyone who's been in the infantry has a story about shitting their pants. It's pretty funny.
So you decide, okay, 10 years, it's enough. What makes you decide it's enough and it's time to retire? Did you just, there was no more mobility, or?
So not to get like super like into
No, don't get into the
politics of the
but,
army.
yeah.
Like I didn't like the route the army's going, and you can either adapt to change and change with it and become a different person, have different views, and I didn't want to do that. The army had just switched to a lot of the females coming into combat MOSs and all that stuff, and the infantry was the last place that was kind of sacred for us, and I just didn't want to deal with that.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, there's no.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you made the decision based on your own observations of having been involved, in the army or in the military in general for however long that you were, that you'd be a better asset to any veterans or anything like that, or anyone outside rather than in.
Yeah, and you get to a point where you can only do so much. Like, you learn how to use a gun, you learn how to do hand to hand, and then after you serve your time as an instructor, the next thing you're doing is just you're overall in charge, more admin paperwork than anything. And I just I really just didn't want to do that.
What did you? I mean, two things, kind of, and then we'll kind of move on from the while you're in service topic. But what did you love about it? What did you hate?
I think it would be the same thing for both. What did I love about it was teaching new individuals how to be a soldier, and when they actually catch on to it and they realize like why you do certain things a certain way, like when we do training missions and they clear across the objective and they're doing everything right, or they clear a room and they do everything right, and they beat up a bad guy, and they get so excited. But then on the flip side of it, when you get that one shitbag private that just, he doesn't know why he really joined, he doesn't really fit in, he's not doing what he's told, and he just fights you constantly on everything, and his life is a train wreck. His personal problems are your professional problems because you're in charge.
Unbelievable. Man, I don't know anything about that here.
Well, we don't do that, really. That's one thing you realize about the civilian world is when you get into a professional job situation, there is a clear separation between your personal life, your personal problems, and anything professional.
Well, you try
to the best you can.
You try
to. Yeah, I get so many calls in the middle of the night to show up, tell first sergeant, tell sergeant major why this guy got a DUI, and I was like,
not a thing anymore.
I don't fucking know. I was like, I was at home
because he's an idiot.
Yeah, I was like,
but. So you touched on a lot of stuff with service, and we could spend another 30 minutes on that. So you get out, and tell me, you walk in attack Tailor again just to probably do a few hours, donate some time. What do they say to you in the transition? Do they sit you down and say, we want you full time? I mean, how does that pan out?
So about a year out from getting out, the CEO approached me and was like, hey, what's your game plans? And I was like, hey, I've done a ride along with this police agency. I got two buddies that are contractors. They're interested. I already did my interviews, my polys. And he was like, well, would you want to work here full time? And it never dawned on me to actually work here full time.
Oh, so you were going down the law enforcement track.
Yeah. I was thinking about doing law enforcement or contracting because, where do your skills as being an infantry dude really pay off? And it's like, hey, and he approached me about a year out and was like, why don't you come work for me? And he laid out what he wanted me to do. And, at about 6 months out of the Army, I signed the dotted line of like the day I sign out, I'm working here. So I actually picked up my DD-214 and walked into my office. So
nice. Amazing. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit along the way. You're doing a lot of. It's more than just shows, BB. You're doing more than just shows with Tack Tailor and with those guys. Like you said, you touched on testing. Talk a little bit about the stuff you're doing with fabrics and with nylon. And I mean, this is really cool stuff. I mean, I'm not you're not a freaking seamstress, for God's sakes. You're doing a lot of cool stuff. You're not just sewing in there. You're giving them some understanding of
making dresses.
Making dresses, how the gear works.
So being a guy that always liked to, be the best at whatever I did, I always had to get, that new piece of kit, and I wanted to be faster. I wanted my kit to last longer. And Tack Tailor had all these, materials, and like they have a great R&D department back there just banging out ideas. And they used to give it to me and were like, hey, test this. So, amongst the platoon I had, whoever was the roughest on certain kit, I would hand them that product. So they would get to test the prototype of that product before it ever went into production. And same with some of the Grey Ghost stuff, like our Grey Ghost UGF belt. We did R&D for about a year and a half before we finalized the design, and then put it on the books, and now it's sold.
I'll say this, I had no idea how big of a shop and how what a scale you guys were doing. I was amazed at kind of how many products you guys
big is the
had.
shop?
If you could, how big is the shop and how many products? I mean, if you can give me a number, if you had to guess a number off the top of your head, it looks like 1,000.
Oh yeah, there's over 1,000 products in just Tac Tailor alone, and then Grey Ghost is a separate company, and then Grey Ghost Precision, the firearms line,
Okay.
has its own products too.
So I think this question is relevant to this conversation and would shed some light on some folk. Shed some light on the relationship between Grey Ghost and Tactical Tailor, because some folks I'm sure are curious out there. Now, you guys are obviously associated. There's a relationship there, of course. How many products for Grey Ghost gear are just relabeled from Tactical Tailor versus a whole new design or different design elements? I don't want to assume anything or insult anyone. I'm just kind of curious about what's going on there.
No, it's a good question. So, Tac Tailor is all bought and sold in the United States, paid by United States workers. Berry compliant for government contracts.
Okay.
Now, there's certain products that we have remade in Grey Ghost that are more offshore compliant, which will save a little bit on money for the average consumer who doesn't need a Berry compliant product.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That
Or
does make sense,
certain agencies don't need Berry compliant stuff. So Tac Tailor has a higher minimums than Grey Ghost has, right? So same with, like I was talking to John about, if you wanted to come and have a product made. So now we can offer you the option to have something made Berry compliant, or we can have something made offshores if that's something you're interested in.
So that would be akin to your competitors, London Bridge and LBX.
Yeah, similar, yes.
Similar? Okay, that makes sense.
And without, obviously, I know this is inside knowledge. You guys manufacture, without getting into names, for a ton of brands out there. I was amazed at how much you had your hand in, and I know that a lot of this stuff toes the line. Just, you have your hand in a lot of stuff is the point.
Yeah, a lot of OEM work that comes through. You got to see all the labels and tags, and then, obviously always interested in making some stuff for you guys. But, we want to be the nylon gear for anybody that needs something.
Yeah, and if you're that good at it, I will say this, walking the shop floor, it had to be 10, maybe 15 sewing machines in there. It was an operation. It wasn't like, one sewing machine and one person back there. It was, you know what I mean? It was a crew. You go into some places and you're like, wow, this is a small operation, but you have a major operation going on there, and a full store in the front too, which I was, that's something we've looked at here, is putting in a retail area. We're kind of,
He's shaking his head.
It gets a little difficult when you're mainly steeped in firearms to do something like that, and it gets into a whole thing, because then you really do need a salesperson there. But you guys have the whole deal there. You walk in from start to finish. It's an experience. It really is, to get to handle the gear. And I got to mess around with some prototype stuff. Cool. And got to get my hands on a couple prototype things, and hope to get my hands on a few more. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say anything. But there's cool stuff coming,
So, sorry, go ahead, Brent. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, so like something I take out of John's book, when people are like, oh, what's the new hotness? What's your favorite product? And it's the next product.
Of course.
The next thing. Oh, that's not a John Bartoloism. That's a freaking Tom Brady line.
It's a
what's your favorite championship
What's your favorite ring?
The next one.
The next one. And that's, when I was in there, I thought it was really cool to see how you guys lay out those prototypes and the things that you're developing. And I'm really excited to see what continues to come, because I remember my first experience with Tac Tailor having a couple of mag pouches and a couple little things that I had through the years with them. And the quality and just everything, was bar none. It was awesome. And like you said, super expensive because it's a very compliant product. And for those of you out there that don't fully understand what that means, there are a lot of agencies and three-letter agencies that's what they have to have. So there's a necessary evil to that component, to it being manufactured completely in the United States, top down, all the way through, and then being sold to an agency. Then there are some offshoot agencies that will allow for those overseas type products. And, some people kind of get in, without getting into that, but it's an industry topic. Oh, this is made here or this is made there. Look, at the end of the day, you're trying to give the consumer the best experience and the best bang for their buck. And you're trying to deliver that to them in a manner that they can afford. They don't realize how expensive it is to truly manufacture some things here completely in the United States. Well, why do I have to pay X for this, or why do I have to pay Y for that? Well, here's why, and that's something that kind of gets glazed over. You get people that are like, well, I have to have this made completely in the United States. Well, that's true, but at the same time, it is nice to have those lower cost options to still be able to own the brand or participate in the brand and what they're trying to do, because the design is still here. Correct?
Yeah, and some of the stuff that you saw too is it's 100% lifetime guarantee for the Tailor products. Like if it rips, it breaks, through usage, you send it into us. We'll either resew it if we can, or we'll give you a new product. And I mean, you've seen some of the stuff that we display some of it. That guy got blown up. You saw his chest rig.
Totally. And it was cool. You guys had like a little mini museum in there, and you had some stuff in there to show kind of the durability and the 100% replacement. You had one really great story you mentioned coming back, and you got some of your gear completely replaced coming back from overseas. And you guys do that with a lot of service members, where they'll walk in with their gear and you replace it right there on the spot, correct?
Yeah, I had a Tailor Fight Light my last deployment, and it just ended up getting just wrecked. Like just wear and tear, wearing it every day. We weren't allowed to take it off, and some of the stuff started to rip and everything, and it held up to what it needed to do. And then when I got back, I was like, hey, can I repair this? And they started to repair it, and then they were just like, here's a new one. So
amazing,
nice.
I mean, you don't see a lot of that today. As best we can, we take a page from a lot of you guys. We try to offer something similar here where we can replace things. It gets a little tricky with firearms, as we talked about. You get into that user error gray area.
Yeah.
It's a little different than being blown up, but that's pretty cut and dry. But for the most part, I mean, that's tremendous customer service, and that's something that's been near and dear to you guys for a long time. I know that from talking to you.
Something we pride to is customer service and the end user. Our entire products are based around the end user. We don't want to create a product that the end user is not going to use or be happy with.
Yeah. No, I see that just by walking through your shop and meeting the people. And everybody was so proud to be there and be involved. And I'm looking forward, and this stems into what you talked about, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do and working on a special project for us that'll hopefully end up on your prototype table. And I've already started the wheels in motion to get you what you need to get that rolling. And then there's other special projects too that I know we'll start stemming into, that hopefully down the line will bring both of our companies together, because I love what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
yes.
No, actually not related at all. Let's. I want to talk about Grey Ghost Precision now. I want to know about where that whole deal came from, what that brand is, what you guys do, what sets you apart, all that kind of stuff.
So I can actually even read from the CEO what he wrote. The Grey Ghost Precision consists of professionals that have an extensive background in the military and in manufacturing. We have a network of industry, sporting shoots experts that have helped us redefine our rifle. The origin of the Grey Ghost Precision was a specific request from the U.S. Military Special Operations Unit that soldiers needed a highly accurate 16-inch semi-automatic rifle platform chambered in a higher hitting caliber. So what had happened was the CEO who works here, his brother, is in one of those units, and he was like, hey, I need a 7.62 gun that's lighter than this current issued one.
Yeah.
What can you do? And literally based off those two things, he went out and he, sought who he needed to seek out and built our first Grey Ghost Precision gun, which ended up just being a 7.62 by 51 NATO round. And it went overseas. 3 of them went overseas with 2 different units. And, they actually worked. They came back. All the guys were super happy. They wrote all these reviews about what they wanted us to change to it, and we changed to it. And then next thing you know, we were making rifles.
Isn't that funny how 60-year-old technology,
So you happened
it actually works. It actually works.
It actually works.
Yeah, but people don't realize, even though the AR platform is older technology, that there's still a lot of testing and a lot of understanding that can be had through that platform, especially now with changes in the suppression game and changes in materials and making things more lightweight, as you said, and just the technology around the core bones of the AR has changed so much that people don't fully understand that there is a certain amount of testing that has to go into that.
Yeah, so we wanted it to be accurate, reliable, and then attainable. So I actually got to take the 5.56 suppress version through SFAUC, Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat, and it's a 6-week course of just shooting every day, all day, nonstop. And we tried to not clean it just because we wanted to see, when it did finally start to fail using a can, and then go back, see if we needed to adjust the gas block. And so, I mean, we went through a lot of testing, and I mean, you saw the certificates that they gave us certificates just for these rifles of like, hey, this rifle went through and didn't break.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And when you walk through the halls, it's a one part history lesson, one part insight into what it takes to really get to that point of the blessing from an agency or from a group or from anything, really. And I got tastes of that while at Enforce and tastes of that while at different brands I've worked with through the years, getting that type of approval. It's not easy. It's not done overnight. It's not just, hey, we'll make an AR and it's going to be, it's just, we'll get a military contract tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. And explaining that to some companies to get them to truly understand that process, and some people, it's painstaking, because they don't fully understand what goes into that. So that is all fucking unbelievable and awesome. Now, as we kind of dive into some of the more juicy stuff, we've had a lot of different guests through here. You obviously touched on a lot of themes. Social media is always a big one, and our industry is a big one. I want to start first with, what do you think of the 2A community now that you're out and submerged in it, as far as at our level, at the show level, inwardly facing? What are your thoughts there?
Oh man,
this is where I think stuff either gets you in trouble. Or,
I know, I got a few of them. We're gonna get into the juicy stuff.
Yeah. So
wait, Sam, how do you say it?
what?
Asking the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
John Bartolo asking the hard-hitting questions.
So I think it's like everything in today's modern society where you don't do a little bit of it. Everyone is so like, I'm a CrossFitter, I'm a vegan, like I'm this,
I'm a Navy
that.
SEAL.
Yeah, and dudes are like, well, I'm pro 2A, and it's like, yeah, cool, so am I. I carry a concealed gun too, but like I'm not running around shouting it. Like,
I think it should be. You're right. I feel like your mindset is it should be expected that you carry a gun, that you are trained in how to use it and how to save someone's life should you need to do that.
Yeah.
And it's just a regular thing. It's not like you're special because of that. It's that's your responsibility. You should take it upon yourself to know that.
I mean, you go a little bit with Spider-Man on that one. It's your responsibility. Like, you have this training, you might as well use it. And I carried a rifle since I was 18, and then when I switched over to snipers at about 20, I've carried a pistol too. So I've been carrying a rifle and a pistol for a little over a decade now, and it's like, I love guns. I love the whole Second Amendment thing. I think people always take it to that next level where it's, they're screaming to the top of their lungs about it, and it's like, do we really need that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that here it's near and dear to our hearts to be well trained. It's something Falcor has prided itself on through the years, to be a well trained entity and everybody involved with it. I mean, we're right down to the owner, down to me, down to everybody. We're either getting in the gym, getting on the range, testing. I mean, it's something we take extremely serious, especially with people we associate with the brand, whether it's Ian, whether it's Tony, people we have involved with the brand, and even guests we have on. It's something we take extremely seriously here. I mean, I know for me, the 2A community, it has to mean more than just pounding your chest and saying, I'm pro-gun, like you said, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. It's about bringing a community together. And some of the issues I've had with it is with it growing has a lot to do with the maturity of some of the people associated with it. You get people involved in the community that really don't really truly work in the community. They're just kind of on the periphery, or they're around, or they're what I call like booth hangers, and they just kind of are they're like cannon fodder, and they don't really draw a paycheck like you do or other folks. And people always run around and say, "What's the definition of real? Is he being real?
Sure.
Are you real?"
What does that mean?
What does that mean? And for me, it means, are you paid by a company?
Yeah.
Are you working in the industry? Are you participating on bringing the industry together?
Even if it's you're volunteering your time to actively better a company that you're associated with, you're giving of yourself to advance everyone.
Because I think we deal with, and I'll get your thoughts on it, a lot of people, and we'll get into social media and all that, but I think we deal with a lot of people that are very divisive to the industry because they really don't fully understand that at the end of the day, we're here to design, develop, test, train, and sell a product to the folks out there. They don't really fully understand what's involved in that, but they like to think that they do, and they just run around and say, I'm pro 2A, and they'll get on the interwebs and we'll go there, and they don't really get it. What would you like to see change the most about the community, and what do you love about the community?
What would I like to see change the most about the community? I would like to touch on what you said earlier. I don't think it's just about shooting, like you said. Like, you've seen I train, physical fitness. I fight, used to be a combatives instructor in the Army, so shooting, fighting, and physical fitness. I think that should be wrapped up and the community should talk about more. But obviously, they're going to be like, it's just about the gun thing, it's just about the gun thing. But the thing I hate is that people are so, one thing. Like, if you're a 1911 guy, you're a 1911 guy. If you're a Glock guy, you're a Glock guy. If you're appendix, you're appendix. They're so set on one certain way that they don't want to hear about anything else from anyone else, or that they're a giant resource of information, but they don't actually practice it. Like, they'll tell you, oh, well, Pat Mack does this, so you should do this. And it's like, Pat Mack's a Delta operator, he's doing this. I'm just a dude walking around carrying a gun, so this is how I need to carry it.
Right. No, you make great points. And what do you love about it?
What I do love is when you do meet the right individuals that you can actually have an intellectual conversation and have good disagreements.
Yep.
And get your point across, and then hear them out and get their point across. And you're like, you know what? That works great for you.
Yes, man. I 110% agree with you. And the reason I was so excited to respond is because of what you said, that you can have responsible disagreements about things and discussions and end up somewhere better than both of you even started. And you can be respectful toward each other and leave that conversation with a sense of mutual appreciation for each other's position on whatever it might be, whatever the topic is.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, just be a good fucking human being.
Yep. And now we'll get into the juicy stuff, the social media and everything else associated with the industry. So we talked a little about the inwardly facing side and the outwardly facing side of just the business and the show culture. Now we turn to social, which if that's the lake, social's the ocean. Everybody can dive in. Everybody can have an opinion. Everybody can chime in. We got the mall ninjas. We got the tactile weirdos. We got, there's everybody who and their mother who's bending kydex in their basement. No knock to those guys, but everybody has their place, and everybody's somebody. Just ask them. That's what I say all the time. Everybody's important. Just ask them. Everybody, from the guy who designs a graphic in this business, gets asked a question or has something to do with this business and has an opinion. How do you, from 1,000 feet, and we're going to bring it down because we got time, how do you kind of categorize all this stuff in your filing box in your brain, and how do you see social media? Because now you're getting into social media, you have to, obviously in this business, hot and heavy. How do you kind of file it all away? You got the gun bunnies, the ninjas, the wizards. How do you file all this?
So it is funny, too, because I get to see all the stuff that they post on the Gregos website, Gregos Precision Tac Tailor, and all the stuff that we have to delete because it'll start, controversy where, we'll post a product and then somebody will just be like, blah, 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 talk nonsense. And then next thing you know, it's like a 100-comment thread of those two dudes arguing about stupidity.
And it gets political.
That's the thing is, I feel like in the gun industry, at least, because that's what I pay attention to the most, is that every customer that has input on, a new product release, or the way that something is being marketed, or the certain feature set of whatever company's XYZ product, they feel the need to like either harshly criticize it publicly every single time. It's like, if you don't like it, dude, just move on and go to something else. Or like, if you have something constructive, then add that in a respectful way. Not be like, this sucks because this reason, and you guys are all wrong. I don't even know what the hell is going on over there, or whatever.
And
it's come on.
And what I never liked is people don't respect a company's direction.
Yeah.
And like, for example, you may have Grey Ghost and Tailor, just like Falcor. We don't like to get political. We're not posting, political stuff. It's not because it's just an issue. I'm not a political advisor. I don't sit here. I know what we're in favor of as a company and as a brand, and that's pretty understood. But people don't understand, oh, you deleted my comment and I was...
You're censoring me.
Yeah, you're censoring me. And like, that people don't realize that at a company level, yeah, there's stuff John Bartolo talks about that he's passionate about, but there's stuff on a company level that, we just don't care to engage in. It's just not, it's not our place to we have certain company, what I would say is testaments or tombstone testaments, that kind of values that we set forth, and that's where we stay. And it's just people don't get it, that sometimes it's not our place to have a giant opinion on it. It's not going to accomplish anything.
And that's something I think a lot of veterans who get out and own companies or work for companies need to learn, that like, you represent the company at the end of the day. Like, your name is attached to something where, I might have my own personal opinions on, what I think is left or right. And then the company has their opinions on what left and right is. And, you need to have a fine balance of that.
So as far as IG goes now, we've talked about it at the company level. There's a lot of personalities out there. There's the shoot fast guys. Like we said, there's so many different personalities out there. What advice do you give to people kind of, and I use the term tuning in to social media, as a guy who's been there and done that? What advice do you give to folks? You've heard me say it 100 times. I'm a guy who says, get your knowledge first. First, who you follow, who you choose to like, and who you choose to comment under and support is something you shouldn't take lightly. And I think too many people, like, I've said it 100 times, get caught up in the, oh, gee whiz, he shoots fast, and oh, gee whiz, look at that cool holster. And, they don't really fully understand that they're throwing their weight behind some things and some movements and some folks that they're not fully understanding. And my stance on it has been, educate yourself first on what you're putting your weight behind. I mean, what do you say to what you see out there and where people throw their support?
So getting to work in the gun industry and see that, like, I've seen people that just throw products at guys because they got like 65,000 followers, and they're like, well, if he shoots this product, it'll get our name out there. And then next week he's shooting another product that you
the
gave
product
him.
tours.
Yeah, and he's just giving it to someone else. And I was like, like, take a stand back and look what what did he used to do, what does he currently do, and what is he going to do for you in the future? Like, there's tons of people who, special operations community guys, get out and they're like, all right, yeah, I'm doing this now, and it's like, then they're doing nothing. They're sitting around.
Yeah, you're
doing
trying to
absolutely
find
nothing.
You're trying to find the person that's going to give you the maximum value for your investment of either giving them something, selling them something at a discount, or having them promote it through their own channels. You're not necessarily looking for the guy with the most followers. You're looking for the guy that has the most bang for your buck, that is the most well respected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely, I'm not going to give a product to a guy because he was a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
If there's a kid
what if he's a future Navy SEAL?
Yeah, have that cadet message me.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a product to a guy that's still currently out there trying to teach people, or still trying to do something that my product is relative for. And, I have a lot of friends that are in the industry that, former special operations guys, and they're still currently doing stuff. And they're like, hey, man, I really need, XYZ gear. And I'm like, here you go. I'll send it out. But then there's tons of people who just come at me with this title that they used to have and expect handouts.
It was Phil from Sergeant Max Gun Shack that brought that up last week. The same thing, almost the same exact point, in almost the same way. Well, and I'm seeing a trend here that it's great. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and but I don't walk around being like, yeah, I'm in the Marines, and you guys need to respect me because of this and that. It's like, no. It's awesome what you did in the positions that you held, and the experience that you have is valuable to me. But like, what are you doing now?
Yeah, what are you currently doing? Like, I got to serve with a lot of good people, got to teach at a lot of good schools, and And I don't bring that up as like a resume builder anymore. I'm like, hey, I work for this company. I know how to sew. I know how to run a CNC machine. Like, that side of my life is over. Like, it's fun. I did it. I know what I'm doing.
And I retain skills from that I'm able to use now to help you, but I don't demand it just because of something that I was involved with.
It starts
years
to
ago.
become the equivalent of what people don't realize that kind of harp on that is it starts to become like you're 10 years into the job market or you're 30 plus years old and you're still listing your GPA from college. Like, I don't want to see your GPA, motherfucker. I want
Or
to
the
see
high school they
I want to
attended.
see how
1.8.
I want to see how many
Hell yeah.
I want to see how many rifles you sold. I want to see what your track record is. I want to see what your ability is to make a phone call. I want to see what your ability is to interact. And of course, something that's huge to me, how do you build relationships? And how do we've talked about this, BB, and everybody in here knows this. I've been through the mill with social media. I've seen it all when it comes to social media. And I've dealt with all kinds of acts. And I've been to the circus and I've seen the clowns. So I have very strong opinions when it comes to social media. And what people don't realize is what you put out there, you can't get back. And I try to explain to people your behaviors and the things that you say and do will affect you for a very long time on social media. And you have to be very aware of perceptions and things that you put out there. And I think a lot of companies as well as individuals don't fully understand. You can to me, it's clear. You can clearly see who's out there for the free product or who's out there, like you said, to be a product whore or who's just kind of palling around. And I say it all the time, and I'm not joking. And I've talked with Tom Rosso about this. There's a lot of people out there that don't fully understand that if we were playing baseball, we'd be making millions of dollars. Some people that are out there that actually have opinions, that have knowledge, that can actually convey that knowledge. But it gets so watered down. And that's why I try to explain to Joe Follower who you put your weight behind and who you support in the movements that you support. That legitimizes some folks in the eyes of the industry. And, those people that really don't have an understanding that their opinion is shaping minds and are putting they're building what Tony would call training scars, and you would probably call training scars, and they're building what's called false opinions of what the inside of the industry is. And I will say this as a CEO, the inside and inward facing of the industry is exactly as you guys put it. It's a grind. If you want a job, you better show up with your bags and be ready to work for a job. You're not just going to get handed a $100,000 salary. And if you want to be a good instructor and you want to go out there and mold minds, you better go out there with a long list of people you've trained with and things you can reference and points you can take back. You can't go out there and just throw whatever you want out there and say, I'm going to just say this, this, and this because it's IG friendly and it's cool. You have to be prepared to articulate your reasoning behind that. And if you can't or you're not willing to, like if you're going to be a shoot fast guy, I've said it multiple times, BB, go compete against Max Michel and take a shot. Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, you want to be the
because
shoot
he's
fast
the
guy,
fastest.
be the
If you
shoot
want to be that
fast
guy, go ahead. If you want to be attacked a ninja, go nut up and go run like you did. Run Safawick. Go run with. If you don't have that opportunity, go run a Tony Seminar course. Go run a class. A high level class and go train with somebody. Don't sit around and get online and say, "Oh, I'm Joe Trainer." My background. Don't go and say I'm Joe Trainer because I went to the local academy.
Yeah,
To me, that's not going to cut it.
There's a lot of companies that recently follow, and then they're like, hey, we're now announcing this guy as one of our instructors, and me and all my buddies sat there and were like, yo, did they really just do that? Like, this guy has no background in training, in the service, he didn't really do anything too crazy. He just did his job, and then he got out and he's just doing Instagram stuff.
Oh yeah. It's something that I think for a long time will plague the industry or can plague the industry because it builds not only training scars, but it gives folks, and this is something I take very seriously and I've prided my followers and listeners with, it gives somebody a false sense of legitimization because they get these followers behind them, and just like I started this conversation, they say, oh, gee whiz, he's real fast, or look at him move, and they don't realize that person probably did 20 takes to do that drill, or they're doing it from 5 feet. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, so they don't fully understand that.
It's another thing too is you know, and this is more directed towards the veteran community specifically. Um, a lot of guys that are fans of the gun industry or 2A supporters, whatever you want to call it, that are veterans expect that the only people they should train with or only people they should look at to train with are like super tactical former action guys that have only done the most badass stuff in the blackest of black ops.
Yeah, that's
but really there are some law enforcement trainers out here in the United States that have a wealth of knowledge and experience on the streets of the United States. There are martial artists. There are martial artists. There are professional competitive shooters. There are so much more out there than folks are looking at. They're zoned in on the cool tactical guy right now. We've got to realize there's so much more in terms of assets for educating yourself.
Absolutely,
just that.
It's something I was talking to John about too. It's like, you know, what do you want to get good at and seek who's the best at that. Like, you know, my background was military. If I wanted to get better at, you know, coming out of the holster, you know, one round hit, you know, I'd go to those competition shooter guys and be like, hey, how do you get out of the holster so fast and get that first round in the A zone? You know what I'm saying? Like, and it could be a girl, it could be a guy that's never served, you know, or it could be a local cop that like defeats his level 3 holster faster than anybody comes out.
And he's just trained it so many times, and he's put himself out there as saying, you know, I have this experience, I can do this and that, and he proves it and he shows it, or that person, guy or girl or whatever. And I'm the same way as you, man. As long as the person can do the job, I don't give a shit who they are.
I have to say guy or girl because people get offended. No,
I know where you're coming from.
I mean,
I'm going to an event on the 22nd. It's like a girls' night only, and I'm there to just represent the company. And like, you know, this female competitive shooter, she's amazing. You know, great shot. And I'm like, good job.
Yeah. I mean, and everybody knows I'm a huge advocate of training, and I've trained a lot with Tony down at Real World Tactics. He'll be the first to tell you. A lot of his knowledge, even though he is a Marine Corps veteran, comes from his time on the streets in Miami and working those streets. And a lot of his knowledge and his knowledge base for teaching comes from the opportunities that he had to work in SWAT and work those streets. And he talks a lot about the urban environment in the United States. So I think what it all comes back to, and something I've preached throughout this conversation, is who you throw your weight behind, who you support on these interwebs and on these social media things. Make sure, you know, we always say target SMEs, subject matter experts. If you're going to work overseas, you may want to target and train with people who have that overseas experience. If you're going to train with people in the United States, target those people that have been on the streets in the U.S. and understand the laws and the accountability of every round and how that goes. You know, if you're overseas and you fling around into a wall, it's probably not a big deal, right? If you're in the United States and you fling around and it hits a wall and it kills a kid, you're probably looking at a case. I mean,
and that's something when you go to different shooting schools too. You know, I've been to shooting schools that are run by, you know, former Army guys, you know, former LE guys, civilians, and they always have a different aspect to that because they've all been trained differently, and like you need to figure out like what's going to work for you.
Right. So a couple other questions as it pertains to social media. What do you think of veterans in social media? Some of the veteran groups out there now that you're out.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think
I'm surprised you didn't want to start a T-shirt company or something when you got out.
Coffee.
Yeah, it's super hilarious. Everyone's like, it's like the Terminal Lance where it says like, you know, the president's gonna retire, and it shows Obama, and he's got an edgy T-shirt that says president as fuck, and he's got a beard. You know, like it's been done before. You know, good shout out to the Article 15 clothing guys, and then I even am sponsored by a clothing company that's veteran owned and operated.
Oh yeah, that wasn't a hit on the guys that have their shit established. Yeah. I'm talking like the dudes that are like, I'm just gonna do that, but do it myself for some reason.
I'm gonna do it better. You know, I just never. It was never a thing of mine that's what I wanted to do. You know, I joined the Army because I wanted to fucking shoot guns and make things, you know, explode. And then while I was in, I developed a love of gear, you know, like the passion of like how everything is articulated with the body. How do you set it up? Ergonomics of motion. And I was like, that's what I fucking want to do.
Dude, I had a guy like you in my unit like that
was
kind of gear queer guy. And there's nothing, the thing is like you took it to a point where you are now making a career out of it. And I respect the shit out of that because that's so awesome. Yeah. Because people probably looked at you while you were in. I'm sure this happened tons of times. You got either, you know, your team leader, your platoon sergeant, whatever, whoever was senior to you, enlisted ranks, were like, BB, what the fuck are you doing, man? You're spending all your money on this gear. What the hell? You got issued this stuff. Isn't that good enough? Like, why are you doing all this stuff? It's like, I like it, okay? Leave me alone. You like to drink Coors Light like it's going out of style, and I like to buy gear, so leave me alone.
Every rank, like my squad leader from Iraq, I'm still friends with. He'll send me pictures every now and then of a picture of me with kit that I made, and he was like, "You've come so far."
Yeah. What do you think of? So you gave your opinion on the veterans in the community. What advice would you? Well, if you want to expand on it, go ahead.
Yeah. We got on gear subject.
Sorry.
So veterans in the community, it's great that they're getting into the industry. You know, they have great knowledge of things. You know, they've actually used this stuff and their life depended on it. But I think they need to do the same thing that me and you were talking about. Was just like, hey, you know, respect somebody else's opinion because they're all different. You know, like
it's a maturity thing.
Yeah, and like, you know, I'm an infantry guy, so of course I try to shit on everyone underneath me. Like that's just normal. If you weren't, you know, an infantry dude, you're a pogue. But like when you get out in the real world, like I respect another dude's opinion if he's like, yeah, man, you know, I like this piece of kit, so I needed to carry it this way or so and so. And I'm like, you know what? I never had to do what your job was. You know, I just had to walk around all day and stare at nothing for hours. Like, you know, maybe he did something that I didn't get to do, so I need his opinion now to make this piece of kit the best I can. And, you know, I'll be man enough to be like, I didn't do what he did, so I'm going to listen to him.
Yeah, and on the same breadth of that is the dudes that are receiving the criticism from whoever, like be able to take some constructive criticism or negative criticism if you might be fucked up and doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, be able to accept that with professionalism and like take a look internally and be like, okay, cool. Yeah. What am I doing to, you're right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that input. So yeah.
Self-analyze.
Yeah.
Be a professional.
A lot of people are getting mad because certain veterans are getting out and like still using, like we'll go with logos for an instance. They're still using logos from when they were in service. So, you know, a lot of dudes in the, you know, special operations communities using, you know, team logos or stuff like that. And they're like, you know, making a patch out of it and they're selling it and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And like dudes are like, well, that was our team logo back in the day. Like you shouldn't do that. And it's like, so then you watch, you know, a bunch of people just argue online about whether this patch should be sold because it has a logo on it. And that's just like a little inference that I can think about right now. And it's like who cares, man?
Mm-hmm. You're not hurting anyone, so
yeah. There's tons of companies that sell logos of everything.
Sure.
You know.
Absolutely. And what advice would you give veterans trying to get to the place that you're at right now? What would be your kind of like elevator pitch when somebody rolls up on you and says, you know, and I know I deal with this from different communities. You know, hey, BB, how do I get asked that the most? How did you get here? You know, BB, how do I get into the position you're in right now? And what advice would you give them?
It's actually funny. I'm writing a paper on it. My old sergeant major is a friend of mine, and he's like, hey, I want you to come in and, you know, I'll line up all the dudes that are 90 days out, and I want you to give them a speech about how to get out and transition properly. And I was like,
90 days out, it's too late, man.
Yeah, I was like, you're already fucked. But basically, I'd say is like whatever you want to do, you know, you took all this energy that you wanted to, like, let's just say, you know, being in the Army infantry.
Sure.
You had this huge idea of what you wanted it to be, and when you joined, you realized that wasn't what it fucking was. But you put all this effort into going there and being good at it. Do that same thing with whatever you want to do. If it's a t-shirt company, coffee company, you know, you want to work in the industry, go there with that mindset every day of you're going to do the best you can at anything they tell you to do.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, at the crust of my journey has been find what you're good at, what you're passionate about mainly, what you have a passion for, you know, and do the fuck out of it. Find what the hell that passion is.
Do the fuck out of it.
Do the fuck out of it.
Do the fuck out of it.
You know, Bruce was on here from Quest Bar, and Bruce talked a lot about his time in the Marines, his time in the NRA, his time in LAPD. He loved fitness. He was on the weightlifting team, and I loved having his opinion because he's not in our industry, but he had ties to it. He ran an executive protection company, and Bruce loved the human interaction, and he parlayed that into...
That was the biggest takeaway from that
episode.
episode.
Into Quest Bar. And what people don't realize is it doesn't matter. You don't have to come out of anything, law enforcement or military, and just, I have to do something with guns. I have to be in guns, and it has to be gun centered around firearms.
One guy, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, find out what your passion is, and it might be, something as simple as coffee, like you said, but it doesn't necessarily have to have a firearm involved with it. Just find it, be passionate about it, and pursue that passion, and just stay there. And hats off to anyone that's able to bridge those gaps, because I'm a huge advocate of bridging gaps and bringing communities together. And everybody knows that that's something that's near and dear to my heart. But I think you hit the nail on the head is find what you love, pursue the shit out of it, work your ass off in it. I don't care if you have to sleep on a couch, and make it work for you.
Yeah, it's what you're passionate about. Mine just happened to be gear. So I got with a company that literally, made gear like since the conception. Like the CEO made gear when he was in the Army. Logan Coffey, he bought a sewing machine and he changed all his gear while he was in the Army in the early 90s because he was like, yo, this shit sucks. I'm going to make my own.
Because dudes think they're into gear and then they realize, no, they're not into gear. Guys like you are into gear.
Yeah, like people are like, oh, I like this, I like that, I like Cry, I like LBT. And I'm like, have you ever sat in major on plate carrier? John came down to my house and I showed some stuff, and I got chest rigs that I made, by myself, first time sewing, where all the stitching lines crooked as fuck.
That's awesome.
So, we're hitting so much stuff. What do you think of the gun bunnies in the industry, male or female? Or what do you think of the people that just are models? Where's their place?
They call themselves
because you and I have a reputation for doing a little modeling.
You guys are both male gun bunnies, both of you.
Fuck them.
Hey, you open a Recoil magazine, and
they're good-looking people.
There's an ad in there with my face on it. Hey, to each his own, and if that's something you wanted to be, if that's something you were passionate about, you just wanted to be a model. And the quickest way, to get in sometime in the gun industry, if you're a good-looking guy or girl, and you got full sleeve tattoos, and or you got a really nice beard. I wish I could grow one.
You're with me.
Yeah. You can get into it, and if that's something you're into, that's something you're into. But then if you are a gun bunny, don't go around talking about how you can shoot guns and all that other stuff.
Yeah, it's a fine line. The example I gave you, and I've given people through the years, I've said this. I think what people need to do is put it in that, we talked about that mental filing cabinet, and I talk about that with a lot of people that get overzealous about things. Oh, she's just taking a picture with a gun, or he's just taking a picture with a gun, blah, blah, blah. And they don't really know anything behind the person. I just say, look, man, does Ronda Rousey care about the girl that carries the ring card and says round 2 on it? Is she really in the fight, worrying about that? No. But no one's going up to the ring girl and saying, hey, Ronda, how do you throw, not, hey, ring girl, how do you throw a punch? Nobody's going up to that person and asking that question. And it's shame on the people that do. Shame on the people that do. I think the next level up is kind of those self-taught, some of the self-taught shoot fast guys. And it's like going to them and saying, hey, Mr. Shoot Fast from your backyard, when you were overseas, oh, wait, you weren't. What do you think of this pouch? And it's like, well, how can he have an opinion on that pouch or she when they've never trained or run a course or have any level of knowledge for that pouch? It's all self-taught. They can have some, but it's not that it's good or bad. You have to understand the reference points.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of people aren't super well-rounded, and they want to say they are because they're so good at one thing. They're like, hey, there's a guy who owns a company that's never served. He's pretty young, and he's a super fast shot. And can I outshoot him? No. But there's so much other stuff I can outdo than him. But it's like everyone will just go to that guy and be like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's like, he's a one-trick pony.
Yeah, and Tony's touches on this a lot, and when we have him on, I'm sure he'll touch on it. It's like Tony did a post the other day, and I laughed because it's something he talks about a lot, him and two. He doesn't use a shot timer. And he's like, no shot timers were used during this. What he tries to explain to folks is a shot timer is great, but if you're in a shootout in downtown Miami, or you're in a shootout in a law enforcement setting, or in a military setting, you can attest to this, BB. Is a shot timer relevant?
No, the shot timer is strictly a stress-inducing item that an instructor will use to mildly increase your stress.
Yeah, sure.
So if he just teaches you, hey, this is where your hand placement are. We're going to do some ready ups. Shooter ready, standby up. He'll do that a few times, and then he'll start saying, hey, go on the clock. And the reason why he's doing it is because he's trying to induce a little bit of stress. And then you go away from the shot clock and you start, doing other types of stress. And that's what a good instructor will do. A shot clock is just a tool. It's not the end all be all.
So the end all be all, and you get people that are like, oh, I hit the target in 0.1, and you're like, oh, okay, what does that mean? So
you're
at
on a
5
flat
feet,
range, standing still.
Yeah. So there's so many other factors, and that just all comes back to the education of the quote unquote follower, or the education of the person out there. And that's what you see in my themes in my lives, and you're touching on, and a lot of folks touch on, is understand who you put your weight behind. And I think at the crust of social media in this conversation is understand who you support, why you support them. Like, why do you follow this person or that person? I'm going to throw it to you to kind of give me some understanding. We'll start to wrap, but who do you like to follow out there? I'm not going to ask you who you don't like, but who do you like to follow?
Who do you like?
What are a couple companies / people you enjoy to follow, and why?
So Instagram's still pretty new to me. I only used Facebook to keep in contact with like family, and then when I finally moved all the family over here to Washington, I didn't use it too much, and then it kicked back in when I started doing a lot for Tailor and Grey Ghost. So I was like, oh, I need to get on the social media. And then Instagram, I'm still fairly new. I think I started it a couple months ago, and there's already like 15 fake profiles with my face on it. So
Nice.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
So looks.
Stop being so good looking, and then it'll stop happening. I don't have a problem at all.
So I like to follow a lot of different companies that are just starting out. Moab Guns makes some parts for like a Scar, but they're thinking outside the box, more like engineering side. Killer Innovations, they make a lot of products that are just completely different. Like it's not just like they're making a magazine catch or a magazine release. Like they're trying to think of a better way to do it, and I think it's pretty neat. And the CEO happens to go to the same gym as me. That's how we ran into each other. Personnel. I don't really follow too many people that I don't personally know. Like if I personally run into you and know you, then after a few conversations, I'll decide if you have anything that will benefit to me, anything I can learn from you, and then that's when I'm like, oh, I'm gonna hit the follow button.
Don't dance around it. Who pick one or two people.
Give me your top
that you're
5.
Like, no, you don't have to give me 5.
Give me your top 3.
But I want to this is something that's important to me. I want to educate people out there that just throw their weight behind people. You brought up one good point. You like to have a conversation with them, and you like to get to know them. But a lot of people don't have that access to folks because they're not walking the show floors like we are. They're not in the what I call inward-facing side of the industry. Like I know in particular one person you probably followed for a long time that you just got the opportunity to meet. What makes you hit follow on that person, and why?
So you're talking about Branch?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said before, I like to be the best at anything I do, and within the last 3 years, I just started getting into weightlifting. I showed John a picture of me.
He looked like he had AIDS.
A few years ago, I was 150 pounds, and then. John will tell you, I kept up a little bit with him at the gym.
You hung.
I've been following Branch now for about 7 years. I got all his articles saved and was like, this guy started out and was like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to dedicate myself to that. And I appreciate the dedication to any one thing and to be the best you can at it. And that's something I try to do, with the Army, being an infantryman. And then, I was like, all right, time to do something else. So I really followed him for a while. Obviously you, John, followed you. I followed these 2 cops. One of them, I can't say their name because his agency, they're not allowed to post a lot of stuff about that. But he was on the same deployment as me in Iraq, and just how he seamlessly transitioned into being a cop. And he's the best fighter on his force, the best shooter on his force, but he's so humble about it. And he never he has cops over his house, and we're sitting there teaching them how to do different things to be better. And these are people training on their off days. They're not getting paid. They're just like, hey man, I want to be better at my job. And how he gets them to buy into it, even if they don't, even if they're a guy that's like, I'm okay. I passed the qual, I do all this. And I've watched him, slowly mind ninja them into coming over every week to train with us to get
That's
better.
awesome.
And I follow him a lot and things that he does.
So you've said it. You've said it all. I mean, you've covered so much. We've covered so much ground. Tell me what's next for you. What's next for the company? Where you
Where
see
you
things
going?
going? Where you're going? And give me any shameless plugs you have.
So for the company, we're always coming out with newer and better gear. Try to make it stronger with all the new materials that are coming out. I showed you a lot of the machines that can do that now, and Grey Ghost has a lot of stuff coming down the line with packs and plate carriers that'll be new. We'll be able to show them off soon. Grey Ghost Precision has the GGP CP combat pistol. Pre-orders are out now. The Mark II rifle line is out. 5.56, 7.62, 6.5 Creedmoor. Maybe a PPC soon. Tailor, we have an entire new line that we're actually about to release that you've seen.
Yeah.
All space age materials. If people thought our Fight Light versions were lighter, most of these pouches weigh about as much as a pen. So, and that's a whole new line that's coming out.
Nice.
And then for myself, just to get better at everything. Every day, just
How
trying
long
to
have you
get
been
better.
out of the Army now?
I'm actually getting paid by the Army until October 1st. I'm on
nice. Terminal leave?
terminal leave.
Nice.
So I've been out about a month and a half now.
The Army has acronyms even more so than the Marine Corps, so like we just call it terminal leave, and you guys called it.
ETS.
Yeah, so that's not a thing in the Marines.
Yeah. So I saved up a bunch of leave
That's
and
awesome.
was like, they were like, hey, are you gonna get out? And I was like, I'm actually turning in my paperwork tomorrow.
So, so anything, I want to ask you one more thing. Aside from our friendship, what do you love about the brand and now me coming over to Falcor? I know you've kind of always looked at the brand and kind of said, geez, I like what's going on there. I know that, and I know we're friends, and I consider you a friend. What's kind of drawn you to our brand and made you want to even come on the podcast aside from our friendship?
So everything is about image, and not necessarily just like a logo, but image on what you guys do, who you guys represent, who you hang out with, who you associate with, who you do business with, and that's all something that I've seen within the last 4 years that has drawn me to use not only your products because they work, but also who you guys represent. I ran your magazine extensions, way back in the day just because they worked. And then when I got to know you, and I was like, all right, so, tell me about this product. And you're like, here you go, try it out for yourself. If you don't like it, send it back.
Right.
And that's why I use a lot of your products.
Oh, I appreciate that, and we appreciate having you on. And it goes without saying. As we wrap, any shameless plugs you want to give to the brands? Where can we find you? And give us any other companies besides the one you work for you want to plug?
Yeah, so obviously go on Tailor, Grey Ghost Precision. I'm also sponsored by Aries Clothing, and then they just started a non-for-profit TaskDev. TaskDev is a organization that has different teams. They have a jump team that does skydiving. They have a climb team that does mountaineering. Obviously, I run the gun team, and there's a dive team. And what we do is we outreach to the veteran community and active community and get those people more engaged while they're in and while they're out. So I've done 2 courses now where we took 20 people out and set up a free instructional rifle pistol course to teach. Most of them were veterans, but we had a couple active duty dudes that showed up too.
Badass.
So
Nice.
Yeah, nice. And where can everybody find you?
Brent.bb Brabrant on Instagram. Just restarted a new one because all the other ones keep getting stolen, which is kind of funny.
And of course, Grey Ghost and Tailor. If you're feeling like seeing some of his modeling photos and his good looks out there, you can head over there. Oh, yeah, the good hair. So so we are going to do a giveaway at the wrap of this to everybody who's still on the YouTube and has head over to the IG. Hang on out tonight. I'll probably just do plug it into the live a little bit tonight with my usual Monday night shenanigans. And we'll give some stuff away. I appreciate everyone getting involved, and we'll throw something in from Tailor, of course, in honor of BB. Yeah, we'll give something away. So I appreciate everybody, and BB, it goes without saying, I call you a friend, and I take that very seriously.
Hey,
And-
thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Next time you're in town, you got to stay at the house. I
No.
appreciate
You
coming
owe me.
out.
You owe me a trip out here. You owe us
Yeah,
a
that's
trip
true.
here,
That's how that works.
and we'll do part 2 here, which will get a
Yeah.
little, which will ask more of the hard-hitting questions.
You better bring some dogs so
Yeah.
I get attacked like you did.
Oh, I loved it, hanging with the pups and everything. It was an awesome time getting to come by, and I don't take that lightly when somebody takes me into their home and I get to spend time with their family. That means a lot, and I'm excited to have you out and now full time in this business, and I'm excited to see what you do. I think you have all the skills and all the makings to do great things, and I think this is only the beginning for you. So I thank you for coming on. I know I speak for the whole team here, and any final thoughts before we wrap?
No, I just appreciate what you guys do, taking it to the next level in the social media industry, starting a podcast. This might be, the new gold standard that companies got to do. Like you said before, every gun company has like social media, people that they hire now, and you guys are just taking it to the whole next level with this podcast stuff.
Yeah, big shout out to Derek Mitchell
Yeah.
for setting this whole thing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, hey, thanks for calling me, Derek. I'm gonna shoot you some texts later.
Yeah, he's also another one of those gear aficionados.
He
so-
likes camera and
Yeah, he's
shit like
into
that.
equipment and everything else. So you and him
Drones
would get
and
along.
fucking all that stuff.
But
We'll
I am-
build you a drone bag.
Exactly.
How many microphones and cameras they have versus how many guns they have.
Versus the guy, yeah, he's all up on that stuff. So we're gonna wrap again. Thank you to BB, thank you to Grey Ghost, thank you to Tailor, thank you to Grey Ghost Precision, and to that whole team over there, and for you taking the time to set this up and make time for us. Can't thank that group enough. They've been super supportive of everything we do here and super supportive of the team here. We have all your T-shirts, all your gear, so we can't thank you enough. And it means a lot to have guys like you on the show. So we're going to wrap. With that being said, please head over to Podcast on iTunes and throw a 5-star review behind our Behind the Flame podcast. It means the world to us to get as many reviews up there as we can. Head over to our YouTube. Please like and share and subscribe and tap that little bell. Stitcher and SoundCloud are in the works. I'm getting updates from my team as we speak. Spotify's in the works. We have to render everything out as audio. So we're working on all that.
Okay.
You can catch BB's episode on iTunes in what, Derek, another week or so?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. We get it up on iTunes, but it is available on YouTube, and I know he's going to share it on his Facebook and everywhere else, and we'll send him the link so he can share it to all the Tailor and Grey Ghost fans, and I'm sure there's a lot of women and maybe even some men that would like to see his face. So we'll get him that link, and we appreciate everybody who's listening, took the time in the middle of their day to listen. Thank you guys, and I'll be going live tonight to give some of that cool gear away that we
Smash.
talked about.
Yep.
So thank you, BB. We're going to sign off, and thank you to the whole team, Austin, Derek, and again, Melinda and Jason, and thank you, Scummins.
Yeah. Thanks,
I appreciate it. And we're going to sign off. Thanks again.
Peace.